I grew up playing the God of War games on PS2, and they are a large reason why I love character action games so much still to this day. So you can imagine my excitement when they reveal a new entry to the franchise during E3 2016. While my enthusiasm was high, I was also hesitant to where it seemed like they were shifting away from their action game roots. Then, upon the game's release in 2018, I saw many outlets giving it perfect scores, and I listened to a myriad of podcasts saying it might be their new favorite game of all time. This immediately put me on the back step, and I ended up nitpicking the game through my first playthrough, trying to prove that it was overrated. Jump forward to 2022, and I decided it was time to replay God of War before its sequel. And oh boy, did I realize just how wrong I was. This is God of War. And just to be clear, there will be some spoilers for God of War here because there are specific story moments I want to talk about in detail. So this is your warning. If you haven't played God of War, stop what you're doing, go play it, then come back and watch this video. The two things that made the original God of War popular was its Greek setting and its combat. It was an extremely popular action game and equal standing with titles like Devil May Cry. This is where a lot of my hesitation came from when I found out we were getting Dad of War, as the internet named it. I thought pulling the camera into a close third-person perspective like The Last of Us would slow the combat down way too much. It turns out, it just made it even more visceral. You're face to face with every enemy as you cleave through them with your axe or rip them apart with your bare hands, and it makes every kill just a little bit more impactful. The combat designers really crafted something special here with the Leviathan axe, and they give you a lot of agency in how you use it. Once you have Kratos upgraded a good bit, you have a variety of combos you can switch up from depending on if you were dealing with lots of opponents at once or maybe one opponent at a time. I never felt handcuffed to one type of attack like square square triangle was in the original games. This is further supported by the ability to use your axe in range situations, which I did frequently, mainly just because of how damn good it felt to recall the axe. The well-utilized rumble mechanics make you feel the weight of the axe as it's swinging through the air and then slams into your own palm with force, but still with precision. It's basically crack for people who love tactile experiences and good rumble mechanics. I really don't know how else to put it. These rumble effects apply to each basic attack and especially to what is now one of my favorite attacks in the game, the heavy attack where you hold R2 to violently cleave into an enemy to deal devastating damage. Giving you the option to use your bare hands to inflict higher stun damage is also great considering I love a good fistfight. The developers also encourage this by giving some enemies whose stun gauges fill faster than their health will drop. Not to mention the brutal yet extremely satisfying finishers that involve ripping opponents in half, stomping their heads in, or ripping them open from jaw to stomach. These finishers are also what helps reflect the DNA of God of War, and what makes the franchise so special. Kratos brutalizing enemies because that is who he is as a warrior, which is something I'm very happy that they carried over from the original entries. One of the biggest surprises of this game, still to this day, is how well the Blades of Chaos feel to use. I remember when I first got them in my original playthrough, and I assumed they would just be used as a fun nod for fans and then not very much after the Helheim sections. Imagine my surprise when I discovered they have their own skill trees, with matching rune sets and encourage a more spammy and aggressive playstyle, where I just unleash my furious Kratos, just as he did in previous titles. Enemies are designed in a way to encourage their use as well by having some enemies that are weak to the fiery blades and others weak to the frosty axe. It allowed me to pull off some entertaining tactics in combat, like freezing a tough enemy in place with the axe and then whipping the blades around to take out the weaker henchmen, only to then beat on the frozen enemy to stun and finish them. It's combat moments like that where the devs give you just enough tools to handle any situation efficiently, all without it feeling scripted or giving you tools that you end up never using. I think the best way to describe the open world in a single word would be rewarding. The world of this game is not just beautiful and magical, which it is. The environmental artists are masters of creating interesting and fun environments that play with scale. I mean, there's a giant fucking snake that watches over you in the main area, and another area where you move around a dead giant. How much more do you need to say? But the other aspect that's equally as important is how much exploration is encouraged and rewarded in each area. God of War never forgets that it's a video game, and managed to add fun puzzles and side quests in a way that doesn't take away from the main narrative. It's even written in as Kratos tells Atreus they are preparing for their journey by collecting gear and resources that will help them along the way. This allows them to lean into their Norse mythology setting in a way that helps flesh out the world with side activities like freeing the dragons in Fafnir's storeroom. They aren't just side activities that are added to inflate the playtime. They feed back into the experience both narratively and mechanically in a way that I was always excited to venture off the golden path. Part of the brilliance behind these side activities is the pace at which they're given to you. You aren't overwhelmed with lots of things to do right out of the gate. Over the course of the game, you're given more land to explore as the water levels go down, which makes the hub area feel alive and worth exploring. It's not that you're just excited to find new gear, you're also curious and often surprised by just how much was hidden below the surface. The pacing also allows you to never feel like you are ignoring something that needs to happen in a timely manner in the narrative. Exploration opens back up after big story moments like reviving Mimir's head. There's a beat in the story that encourages you to look around because you know you have time. All the realms are not only beautiful, but they also have Metroidvania aspects once you get tools like the chisel or Atreus' magical bow. An example of this is the hidden doors that contain Valkyries. You're introduced to them at the beginning of the game in the woods, but you can't actually open them until halfway through the game. The true beauty in the world design is how all these systems reward the player in ways that make them want to face down each challenge that is put in their path for the treasure that is waiting for them on the other side. It makes the journey more memorable as you conquer obstacles together alongside Kratos and Atreus. And it makes you more invested in the world as it develops and grows with every side task you complete. The narrative is the main aspect of this game that I really underrated in my first and only other playthrough in 2018. As I said, I went into it trying to find reasons that it wasn't a 10 out of 10, instead of just taking in what the game was, a fantastic story about a father and a son. However, I still don't think the game is truly perfect, and I think it called back to its roots in certain ways that maybe they should have left in the past. It's a common trope in action games to ride up an elevator while fighting waves of enemies. Back in the day when the main point of action games was to fight things, this setup made sense. They were giving you more of a reason why you were here in the first place. I think the narrative is what makes God of War truly special this time around, so these sequences really stuck out like sore thumbs. It feels like padding in a game that otherwise feels perfectly trimmed down to only what adds to the experience. I would prefer if they ditched this action game trope and maybe just have a nice little dialogue section between characters. Build their relationships and flesh them out even further, instead of just having me hack through enemies just to give me something to do on my ride up. If I'm being honest, that's my only real criticism with the game as a whole. I think something I forgot about was how enjoyable the relationship arc between Atreus and Kratos is here. Their relationship ebbs and flows in a very natural way. It's not like they hate each other one moment and then there's some big impactful story moment and then they're just thick as thieves. They get close, then they pull apart, then they judge, then they forgive, all in ways in which a real human relationship does. Their relationship goes hand in hand with their physical journey, with good times and bad times, and there are many nuances in the performance of Christopher Judge as Kratos specifically when it involves his painful past or the loss of his wife. You can feel the subtle pangs of loss he's experiencing when Atreus brings her up only to quickly put back up his emotional wall just so he can complete his task. You really get a sense for how much Faye meant to him and how much she helped him move forward from his past. You also get plenty of chances to see how much Faye meant to Atreus and how up to this point she was really the main parent filling in the shoes of the emotionally distant Kratos, which is one reason Faye made her final request was for her husband and son to grow closer. This main narrative between Kratos and Atreus is made even more impactful by the lore of the world around them. I, as a player, and assume most others, are in the same shoes as Kratos who know nothing about Norse mythology. Having Mimir serve as a third member of the party as a sort of encyclopedia to the world helps fill in the gaps to make the world feel more lived in. It's as interesting as sitting around a campfire with a great storyteller, but the stories he's telling you are painting the world. It also helps give us necessary background knowledge for the big players like Thor, Odin, and Freya. These stories also help add to the overall message of family and how the sins of the father only pass down to the son if you let them. You can always choose to be a better man, which leads me to one of my favorite moments of any video game ever, the reclaiming of the Blades of Chaos. As a longtime God of War fan, these iconic weapons have always been at the top of my list as an all-time favorite weapon in games. The moment of going back for these weapons speaks to the entire theme of Kratos' arc, and how you can't let your past define your present. However, you also can't ignore it and pretend it never existed. You have to face it. You have to take those negative experiences and consider them hard lessons learned. Only then can you use them to build a better future for yourself and those around you. Trauma can be a difficult thing to overcome, but connections to friends and family are things that can help us move past it and become a stronger version of ourselves than we ever thought possible. I think what made God of War so special is that it doesn't ignore the games that came before it, it embraces those games, and it uses them to build something even more special, more personal, and more refined. But hey, that's just my opinion. What I'm curious about is, what is your opinion of God of War? Was it one of your favorite games of all time, or do you think it's a little overhyped? Let me know in the comments below, and as always guys, thanks for watching.
Goodbye, Faye.
I love you, Mom.